So, good afternoon, good day, hello from a frosty, freezing? Yes, I think it probably is zero temperatures here, Warsaw. I'm not going to say Eastern Europe because technically it's Central Europe. So I have the great privilege of introducing to you guys a bunch of dudes, a bunch of nefarious renegades who've descended on Warsaw, a couple of guys who've done approach courses, one in September, one in November. Would you like to, Mr. S, would you like to just tell the world, just so that they know that there's people here, you know, and I'm not just doing a solo gig here.
Good afternoon, this is Mr. S.
And Mr. S is, where are you from? Where do you hail from?
So from Yorkshire originally, as you may be able to guess from the accent, but I live down in London now. And then, I did the Warsaw approach course with you a couple of weeks ago, and I've come back again this weekend. I liked it so much to do more approaches.
Mr. A, you did the approach course in September, and you are from...
So I am from France. I hope you can understand me. I'll try to pronounce correctly. Yes, so I'm Mr. A. I moved in Warsaw and in Warsaw, and I did the course in September with Alex, which was brought me a lot of knowledge, practical knowledge that I didn't had from the digital products that I had.
Yeah, that's a good question,
Yes.
isn't it? And it's an important issue that there's just something about actually practically getting together with other dudes and getting a little bit of coaching. It just transforms the theory spins the straw into gold. And of course, one of the reasons you're over here, of course, is because the Masterful John Matrix was top billing. In fact, I've heard they're all here for him. None of you guys came because of me. Is that right, Mr. Matrix?
Apparently. Yeah.
He's a modest gentleman.
Yeah.
But John is here. John's really enjoying spending some time in Warsaw.
Absolutely.
And so we're going to talk about these guys' stories, make it real, find out what adventures they've been on, how they've got to where they are today, and what they are going, what their goals are, what their focus is for the mid and long term. But before we get on to that, I just wanted to talk a little bit, and feel free to chip in, guys. Talk about approaching generally. I just feel the world has changed. There's been a sort of seismic shift in society since, day game guns like John Matrix and Tom Torero and Andy Osher, etc., walk the streets of London. There has been a change, a really noticeable change in the social climate of things, and there's a lot of political correctness out there. I've been thinking about the whole kind of why we're doing what we're doing, and why it's so really incredible and so amazing, and also some of the pitfalls that there are out there. You know what? I think with this stuff, and Tom's anniversary of his death is coming up. I've been reflecting a lot over the past year as a result of what happened, and people think approaching girls in the street, there's something wrong about it. Although if you go to Eastern Europe, and if you go to Minsk, Russia, for example, it's like, I remember I had approached a girl at the railway station. We've been dating in Russia, and I teased her about on a text, and I said to her, look, it was, I said something kind of very Western, like, oh, you must have thought it was a bit odd, a British guy coming up to you at the railway station out of the blue, and she was like, no, I don't understand what you're saying, why? And I was suddenly backtracking and trying to sort of, I didn't really mean that. But the conditioning was so strong in me about what's right, what's wrong. Like, oh no, the only way you can ever meet a partner is on Tinder. That's normal. that I found myself sort of coming out with this off the cuff statement. And I think it throws the light on this whole area of, men and women and romantic relationships and the dating dance. And as I say, I think what is most important for me is motive. I think that anything in life, even shooting someone in cold blood, is getting a bit dramatic. But when you think about it, it's about what the motive is behind it. Because if you're shooting someone because they're about to, kill your mother in self-defense, but if you're shooting someone because you're intending to kill them because you're a murderer, and it's like the same thing with girls. If your motive with girls is because you want to get confident around women, because you want to enjoy adventures with women, if you want to have partnership relationship with women, if that's your motive for learning skills, so that you can be a better man, and that you can bring out your masculinity, and thereby she projects her femininity, and there's this beautiful polarity that work. If that's where you're coming from, and actually, what a brilliant place to come from as you go about your day to day, honouring and enjoying that kind of dynamic, then you are adding value to the planet, to the world, my friend. I think, and that value definitely needs to be added. Women might not say this, but they're crying out for it. By the same token, if your motive is, I don't know, I'm going to nail this and score as many bitches as I can, and I'm going to, stick them up, I'm going to put the hits along the fuselage of my aeroplane kind of thing, like it's some sort of game or grouse shoot where you're objectifying women, that is a bad motive to come from. I just think, bit of a speech, but something I feel quite passionate about, because I've had a lot of some grief over the last couple of years, and so I've thought very carefully about what it is I'm doing, whether it's coaching other guys, setting up these courses, or just approaching girls in the street myself. Because to be honest, who round this table doesn't feel that there's slightly, am I just approaching a girl cold in the street? Mr. A, do you feel that?
Yeah, sometimes it's really awkward, I'm wondering if it's a normal thing to do, but when I see the rewards, and I feel much better. I feel like it's the most natural thing to do, because I feel so much pumped up when I get these looks and this kind of chemistry.
It feels odd until the moment and the magic, and then it feels the most natural and healthy and wholesome thing in the world, doesn't it, John?
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. The more you do it, over time, the more natural it feels. Because when it becomes something that you do, kind of like brushing your teeth, not exactly like brushing, but you know what I mean? It's just become so normal for you to be social with people. And, I'm not just talking about approaching women, but the barista in the coffee shop, the woman behind the counter, the checkout, whatever. All of those things become so normal for you that then it's just what you do. It's just like brushing your teeth.
Part of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, before I did the approach course with you a couple of weeks ago, in the sort of run up to it, you're thinking, oh Christ, am I going to go out and stop all these women and just chat them up on the street? And it seems like a big thing. But actually, once you sort of get in there, you stop them, you show some sort of confidence, you sort of have that cheeky grin on your face. That there's been such a good reception in general. Like, I think particularly in Poland, the women are very feminine. As you say, they kind of expect that. And even if at the end it's like they say, oh, they've got a boyfriend, they've got to get going or whatever, there's most of them, you can tell they just really enjoy the interaction. And actually, the act itself of stopping them and starting a conversation has been much less daunting than I thought. Once you get going, as you say, it just starts to feel very natural, that act in and of itself.
So you feel that same thing. It's kind of a bit odd when you first do it, and then afterwards it feels the most natural thing in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly in Poland here, so I'd previously done some approaches in like London a few years back, which I found it more difficult there. I think the women were probably a bit less open to it. There's probably more people in London in general, just people with low value stopping you, like a lot more like, charity chuggers, homeless, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there's a bit more of a defensive vibe there. Whereas here, I mean, as John pointed out the first day, there's much more of a chilled vibe. There isn't that same sort of rush and manic busyness on the streets. It's not as aggressive. So I think that, combined with the fact that women are generally a bit more feminine, so they expect it.
Yeah, you were you were into it almost immediately. A bit like Mr. A, actually. You were both. You hit the mark almost immediately. Not everybody did, and particularly your physical presence. And maybe it was partly the style thing, but no, it wasn't. No, that was you. You're very. Whenever I would look at you in front of a girl, you just look very solid, very strong. Like, she was one of the privileged few women in the world for whom you were, generously bestowing on her 7 minutes of your time.
Right.
It was quite. It felt like it did feel a little bit like that actually.
Well,
Which is very cool starting point.
It's one of those areas where I guess a little overconfidence is always going to be better than a little underconfidence, I suppose.
Yeah, it was actually your physical confidence, the way you stood. So yeah, we'll come on to your story in just a moment. Have you got anything before we wrap up on this sort of opening kind of mission statement for me? I just do think it's important. You got anything to add, John?
It does feel very unnatural. And I remember when I started many years ago, it was the most unnatural and alien thing I ever did in my whole life. It was awful. Like, I remember that first day, I actually can't remember the feeling. Like the approach anxiety was so bad, but I can't remember what it feels like because it's been that long ago. And now it's like brushing my teeth. So it does feel alien. It does feel weird. The more you do it, the better you get, the more comfortable you get, and you get enough positive reference points that when you approach women, they want to talk to you. Even if they're married, they want to talk to you because you're good at conversation. Then it becomes normal. That's the thing, is the better you get, the more normal it becomes because you don't get bad reactions so much, especially here. In London, you do definitely, it's a tough place to learn, but the more skilled you become and the more relaxed you become, not every. Obviously, there'll be some approaches you do where they don't want to talk to you. But the vast majority, you have a great conversation anyway because you're very skilled in conversation. Therefore, you're able to talk to anybody about anything pretty much, and the other person doesn't feel imposed on. And especially when it's an approach man to woman, you're giving her a compliment, you're hitting on her, right? It makes her feel good. It makes you feel good, and you're able to carry the conversation, which is what you need to do, right? She's not going to do it for you in the vast majority of cases. Occasionally you might get a girl where she just talks and talks. For the most part, you're going to have to carry that conversation until she's comfortable. And then it really does become a part of you to the point where it's just what you do. It's just normal. It becomes very, very normal, especially in places like this where it's very well received. That's another thing. It feels more normal here, definitely, than it does in London. 100%.
Yeah, that's interesting. The further east you go, the more this cultural glass ceiling isn't there. If you know what I mean by a cultural glass ceiling, the idea of approaching and dating girls during the daytime. I mean, I was talking to a chap on Skype a few weeks ago who's like, who travels around the UK, and his job takes him from one city to another, and he's like, you know, it's getting a bit weird at times. One girl was recording him on a date, and the sort of it's like one girl was like, well, you haven't got social media? Well, I'm not going out on a date with you. And it's like everyone's moving to a world now where the dating is done through, you know, whatever, the ether. As such that the younger generation, perhaps, and probably don't realise this being slightly more mature, this side of the table, but the younger generation coming up have grown up in a world where the idea of approaching a real-life girl, particularly in the universities, where you hear guys aren't getting sex and the girls aren't getting it either. That sounds logical, doesn't it? Well, I don't know, they could be girl on girl. So, I mean, this is quite a kind of, from my point of view, quite a scary social evolution. The men aren't going to... And, of course, the thing about the internet and the ether and that, Tinder and whatnot, is it's like women are now just... He says that they're just... He's got a brother who's, you know, a good-looking, legally educated guy. He's like the sports player. The girls are just looking at what's on their phone and just enjoying, like, being in the sweet shop of men that are, and there's not, you know. In short, I don't think there's much sex happening. Not as much as there was when I was at university. Sad.
And so I was going to say, it also includes scrolling, which I'm sure we all know is really bad for you. Scrolling on any app, it really messes with your dopamine system.
Yes.
It's the same as cocaine. It's just this anticipation of the next thing that you're going to look at drives the scrolling.
Oh, yeah.
Facebook, Instagram. I've stopped all of them. I don't use any of them. The only one that I'm really trying to stop is YouTube. That's the only one that gets me is YouTube. But I don't scroll. I really try not to scroll. And turning dating into a scrolling thing is really bad.
It's like female porn.
Yeah.
Guys look at real porn. Women's porn is just scrolling and thinking, you know, the next guy, the better guy, like him, don't like him.
Yeah.
And it's very shallow, you know. It's shallow things, and they never get to the real authentic, you know, face-to-face interaction, and it's really unfortunate because it's really where we are coming from, you know, as real human beings. I think
it makes you lazy as well.
Yes.
It's just like scrolling makes you lazy. Right? If you can get dopamine. Sorry, going back to. I know you don't like talking about dopamine. But I did.
How many minutes is it before John started talking about dopamine?
You can get free.
You've been quite good actually. Yeah. It's 20 minutes.
You can get free dopamine using an app, right? Then you don't want to go out and do something that you'd have to work to get the dopamine, which makes you lazy. It does. It really does. Like, and I think that's been scientifically proven. Although I can't cite any studies, but.
And I think, as you're saying, Alex. It is very much going against the cultural grain, and it's a very old school thing now in many respects to just a man to approach a woman on the streets. But I think for myself, it's as much, well, look, if I want a high value feminine woman as a partner, you need to be that high value masculine man, right? And one component of that is having the balls and being able to confidently and competently chat up a woman and not just hiding behind an app. So I think, I mean, for me, that is one of the reasons to sort of really develop this skill and why I want to develop as a man in that respect. Yes. And just going back to the point you raised on ethics, I think one thing that did stand out for me in the course in general was actually the main feedback I got from you guys is, yes, you know, you're very confident delivering the opening and this sort of thing, but what you need to get better at is bringing out more of yourself and telling stories and this sort of thing, which, you know, that's very authentic, right? The key advice there is to bring out yourself more in an authentic manner, which is, you know, the opposite to how some people might perceive this sort of thing from the mystery days where it was all about manipulation and tricks. This was like very transparent and very much about bringing your authentic self out in a way that's attractive to women.
Yeah, I think John should be credited for, introducing us all to the importance of storytelling. And I've had comments on the channel, and guys, I do read these comments, and I've got the laptop open in front of me actually, and hoping to percolate some of them through to this conversation. But someone said, yeah, the storytelling is just such a cool and authentic thing to learn. Well said, Mr. S. Well said. That and it's that sort of showing yourself. You're not being like a vulnerable wuss and telling her about your problems. You're just opening the door to telling a story about who you really are. It's quite actually that's quite a nice response to the. Because what could be more natural and authentic than in a flirtatious way swapping stories with the girl?
But again, it's how we do it. We already do it with everyone. We just don't do it when we're approaching a woman. We do it all day long. Every single person that's listening to this podcast already is great at this skill. When they talk with their friends, they do it fantastically well. If you're struggling, it's because when you are speaking to that attractive girl, it goes out the window, and you almost forget how to do it, and you're trying to do something different because you're chatting to this girl. Actually, what you need to do is the same thing that you do when you talk with your friends, which is to speak without filter. And when you speak with, well, I say with not with zero filter, but with a lower filter, like when you talk with your friends, a low filter, and it's inherent in in the way that we speak. It's automatic. We like us guys, the four of us here. We've already done it. The last hour we've been together, we've done it over and over again. We've told each other stories, reciprocal storytelling. But it's when we're not used to talking to women, then talking to women suddenly becomes this thing that's different from talking to anybody else, and we try to do something different, and then the storytelling goes out the window, and it becomes this one-sided, weird kind of cold reading exercise, which is the most common mistake that I see guys make. Is that they and once you spot it, it's obvious. It's so obvious what's missing from an interaction is that spontaneity, that personal touch, the details in the story, and it's so disarming when you do it to somebody you don't know. It doesn't have to be a girl; it could be anybody, right? When you just tell them a little story and there's some personal details, they'll just relax and they feel like they know you.
Yeah, and then you can generate some traction, flirt, tease and challenge, and it's done from a much more natural place rather than running kind of some sort of a model.
Exactly, that's it. It comes from a natural place. It comes in the structure of a normal conversation. It's so normal that they don't even notice that you're picking them up, even though they know you are. It doesn't feel like that you are. They just feel comfortable talking to you, and they're attracted to you.
But I have to put stick a health warning on this. That don't think that this is all about going out and telling your story or life stories to girls. There is a model. The paradox of this stuff is that you need the model, because you need the scaffolding, the training wheels, whatever, to that you then throw away once it's become more natural. But the storytelling technique will give you an early flavour of how it is just to have a normal, natural conversation with a girl. We should. So basically, guys, just to wrap up on this this idea of where you're coming from, because I think it's really important. I mean, is that society's loss, I guess, is your gain. If you strap on your balls and go out and learn how to approach girls any time of day or night, and you've learnt those skills, you will stand out until such time as God decides to rewire female biology, which might take some time, even though Elon Musk is probably working on a project along those lines. But it's going to take this, and that is probably almost insurmountable. Men and women are. Vive la différence, as the French say.
It is a literal superpower. I've really been feeling that more so here, that I could just walk around and I can just talk to any woman that I want to. And it's almost like I've done it for so long. It's almost like I take it for granted, but actually, it is a superpower. and something that I've had to work hard to get to, but it's worth it. It's worth pushing through that initial pain.
We had one comment that was asking how difficult or easy was it, John, getting back on the horse
Funnily enough,
10-year or 8-year break?
It was about 8 years
Relationship,
and it honestly, it was like I never stopped.
Really,
100%. I'm being 100% honest. I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet, but I think I've done it so much in the past that it was just like I just opened the first one and it all just, the words just came out. Yeah, it was weird.
The horse was ready and waiting.
It was. I think it's almost like it's just ingrained in my psyche from years and years of doing it before, that it wasn't difficult getting back into it. It really wasn't.
Now let's just bring Mr. A into the conversation, because I think your story is inspirational, too strong a word. I found it a great example of what we were talking about before this podcast, which was getting traction, making yourself accountable, taking action, mates, lads, taking action and restructuring things. We talked before you came over to Poland. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your story, Mr. A, and how you got here?
Yeah, sure. So I've been interesting about dating stuff and seduction for ages, and actually it didn't click before just a few years ago that I started to dare to do these things for real. I was addicted to reading about these incredible stories. Like, okay, a guy is moving from his pal and he's speaking to a girl and he's coming back with his number, which for me was really astounding.
How long ago was that? What sort of?
It was maybe 2012 or something like this. And
what's your background? Where do you live? Where do you come from?
So I'm coming from France, but I've traveled a lot. Until I was 18, I was crazy shy, and at 18 I was fortunate that a girl did everything for me. So that's how. That's how.
Bless them.
Yes, bless her.
Angel.
And without her, I'm sure I would be a virgin for so much more time. But at some point, I was becoming more and more helpless, And then I had a couple of times where I was lucky, but I didn't understand really the dynamics, of male and female polarity, And obviously, when you are pretty young, okay, you can match with a girl on Tinder, and okay, you will do some mistakes, but okay, she'll forgive you, and by chance, by luck, you are going to have her, okay. But then you realize that there's really a right way to do these things, and to avoid being the nice guy that is going to be supplicating to the girl. And while I was aging, I was also becoming more and more helpless, because I was saying, okay, now I'm less and less popular on these Tinder applications. What am I going to become? And then I read your book, Too Late Mate, and it was completely what I was thinking about. Is it too late for me?
You're a spring chicken compared to me.
So I was really wondering what I'm going to do now. Am I going to go to a website to say, okay, I want to marry a girl, and then I get the girl, and then okay, this is sorted, but without having the woman that I really want, that I have a lot of complicity with me and all the rest. And so yes, when I read this book, I was I was very enthusiastic about this, and I was like, I really need to master this thing. So I tried it on my own. I was in Mauritius at the time. Mauritius, yes. And
which has, sorry to interrupt, but just
yes.
What's the capital city of Mauritius?
It's Port Louis.
And what's the population? Is it?
So the population is 140,000 people, which is a little low. Normally.
So you were a lone wolf there then, were you?
Yeah, a lone wolf, and nobody is doing a day game there. And I was very awkward there, and I didn't know, because I never met someone doing day games. So I tried to do what I read on this book or this video, but a lot of mistakes I wasn't aware about, because nobody told me what I looked like when I was talking to a girl, and so it was a lot of trial and error. I had a couple of yes girls, fortunately, so it enabled me to get motivated to continue, and actually at some point I was really it was mind-blowing what was possible. Even when the nice thing is that even if you are very awkward, you can get results if you are persistent. And I remember before I read your book, I tried to do a day game, but I did a couple of them, and I was like, oh, compared to this guy on the video, I'm like, shit, this is not for me, and then but what I didn't know is that these guys on the video, they show only the successful interactions, and so I was more and more helpless, because I was thinking, okay, there must be something really wrong about me, and when I read your book and then I contacted you, then I was thinking, okay, if I can get into this fellowship of people doing
Fellowship
this.
of Mavericks.
Yes. Maybe I can.
What's the French term for a fellowship of Mavericks?
Communauté. Actually, we have the same. We have a mentor. The same word in English, and so it would be like a communauté de mentor or something like this. Communauté de. Yes, this kind of stuff, and so I started to do it in Warsaw, in Warsaw, which.
Well, you relocated here. You made quite a big
relocated.
step.
Yeah, it was a really big step, a leap of faith, and I remember I asked you the question on the group. So where is the best place to do a day street hustle, as we might call it, and so you told me Warsaw, and I was like, okay, I need to go to Warsaw, and then I went there, and because it's become a top priority for me, because it was such lacking capacity, lacking something that was really lacking in my life,
Yeah.
So I was feeling I need to do something about this, so should I talk about maybe the goals?
That's a very good.
Yes.
Thank you. That's a really helpful insight into the journey that we've all been through.
Yes.
But what was interesting was all we saw, like me and John, was quite a lot of confidence. Actually, I remember we went out with you and another chap on the September course. And it was raining or cold or something, and I thought, we're going to try talking to girls in shops. And it was like, there was one shop just at the bottom of Gemelna, and it was just quite a small shop, quite busy. And I was like, all right, Mr. A, off you go. And you were in there, and me and the other student were just watching through the windows. We were looking at our watches, because you'd opened a girl at the counter, and you're having this conversation with her. Do you remember?
Yes.
And it went on from there. It was quite good having the rain, because it meant we went to TK Maxx and another that parade of streets. Couldn't dig you out. I got lost, went looking for you. But every time I turned to a new shop aisle, there you'd be at the end. So that's what me and John saw on that course. Obviously, and you got a few numbers too, didn't you?
Yes.
And well, I now know that you've been having some really rather lovely dates as well.
Yes.
That's a great story, isn't it? Because it's like it's from zero to hero, isn't it? It just you know that you want to do something. You're out there and you've got the determination, and yet you do need the knowledge, and you do need. Well, I certainly did. Buddies.
Yes.
It is hard on your own.
Yes.
It is hard alone. What's your story, Mr. S? Let's hear you.
Yeah, so my story starts out quite similar to Mr. A's, in that I was very shy as a boy, not very good with women, except my story does not include the part where a girl just comes and does everything for me aged 18. So
Really? I haven't had that moment. I bet you have had a moment though when a girl has been a yes girl or two.
Well, in my early years, not when I found attractive myself. So, so I ended up being a virgin age 25, and I guess ultimately, if you're a shy sort of 14-year-old boy, it's fine. But if you never start developing, these things just compound essentially. But going back to your earlier comment about people having chips on the shoulders and things, I never had that issue. I've always very much had an attitude of personal responsibility. Like, it's up to you to build the life you want. It's up to you to become the man you want. So eventually, I started venturing into just like Tinder and all this sort of online stuff to begin with. Which, if you're a young man, you're not too bad looking. You'll get some girls of a similar age, not too bad looking.
I reckon you look pretty good
yourself.
On your Tinder profile.
Well, I do now. Less so then. But I think what was useful for me actually was because I'd sort of read, I sort of knew about day game back then, didn't have the balls to try it, but like I'd read like Nick Krause's Day Game Mastery, for example, and actually that has a great section dedicated to how to run the dates. So it has things like this very useful sort of 3-step verbal and physical escalation process, such that you're not just leaning in for the kiss at the end without a clue what's going on. You sort of escalated up to that point and this sort of thing. So actually having a bit of an understanding of how one should run dates in theory was actually quite useful, because from the start I was sort of trying to escalate and all this sort of thing. And then, started getting reasonably competent on dates and having sex with girls. Got into a couple of relationships over sort of, age 25 to 30. And also focused on developing myself outside of that as well. So started reading a bit about fashion and understanding style, so I wasn't just dressed like Mr. Generic. Started living a more interesting life, like travelling, picking up hobbies. Started going to the gym, get a bit of shape, so I wasn't like I used to be super skinny. All these sort of things help, and developing a career in this sort of thing as well. So,
did you have a trigger moment? Like I've got a trigger moment when I got this text message from the Polish girl.
Yeah, it's a great question. So to be honest, I would say yes. It was sort of a couple of years ago, just after COVID, and I'd got this very attractive Romanian girl on a date from online. But it was like just from the start, like, she was sort of challenging, but I was, passing the shit test and all this sort of thing. We were flirting really well. She was very, attracted. I could almost tell from the start. And she was like maybe 10 years younger and definitely more attractive than myself. And then, on the third date, managed to get her back to mine. And, that was fantastic. And it was like then I realised, okay, you've been working on yourself for the last sort of 5 or 6 years. You've now reached a stage where you're capable of getting these, attractive feminine women, younger than yourself, better looking than yourself, from the date into the bedroom. And I've had one or two.
So why did you need to learn how to approach girls?
Because
it seems to me as you're doing fine
from the date onwards.
Online.
Yes, but I mean, I think the downside of online is, online's fine if you want to date women of a similar age and similar looks. I would rather date women younger and better looking. There's one example there. There's one or two examples since, but it's that's once a year or something, right? There's a great. You're not going to get that very often just because of the dynamics. Right. So for me, day game then becomes about just meeting the sort of girl I want, who's feminine, attractive, etc.
Of an age range that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, exactly.
An age bracket that you're...
Yeah, an age-appropriate bracket, which is about a decade younger than myself. And just doing that more regularly, basically.
Didn't your last girlfriend tell you that was a good idea?
That what was a good idea, sorry?
That a girl, a younger girl.
My last girlfriend actually, she was raised in America but quite feminine by Western standards. One thing she did say was, I think you need somebody who's more happy to fall in line with what you want. Which I think is then, okay, so I need a younger woman who's a bit more feminine, perhaps from Eastern Europe then, to work well with me. So, I guess that's the other thing, right? I want this sort of woman. I want a more feminine woman. I like the Eastern Europeans when I've been with them before. There is more of an expectation. You need to be more of a man, right? If you want.
Well, yeah, you kind of like here. It's like it was in the West in the 50s or the 40s, or But now you're not allowed to say at a dinner party, "Oh, I'd like to date a young woman because I feel that she'd fit more into my life." Oh, how dare you? Isn't it interesting? And yet, around a dinner table in the 50s or the 40s, if you'd said, I want to be an independent woman and make my own decisions in life, and the guy can just turn up on Tuesdays and Thursdays when I'm feeling itchy, it'd be like, "Oh, madam, what a this outrageous idea! How, what sort of life are you suggesting that we live? What sort of message are you giving to the young women of the world?" It's like weird how society flips up and down and around and goes back on itself. And in the East, it is more traditional so much more traditional in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this comes back to what I was saying before about personal responsibility. It's up to you to figure out what you want in life and figure out how to get it ultimately, irrespective of what the media in the West is saying. If it doesn't work there, well, then move somewhere where it does work, right?
Yeah, it's the minority, isn't it, in the West? Because I think most girls, if you talk to them and they actually told you what the truth about how they felt, they probably didn't want to be. There's so many women who don't really want to be a housewife, a mother, and have their own independent career. But they're not allowed to say that. I just want to stay at home and look after the kids and look after my husband. I remember being in a cafe and chatting up a Ukrainian girl, really highly educated at university, smart, sassy. And I said, "So what are you going to do with your life?" This is another one of these moments where my social conditioning came through. What's the plan? Are you going to set up your own fashion brand and run your own business? She said, "No, I will look after my husband." I kid you not. And she felt that I'd sort of slightly not insulted her. She was too, polite to say anything. But I felt as if I injected my conditioning onto her that you are not a woman, a complete woman, unless you have reached the same point on the career ladder as your male counterparts. Isn't that funny? I digress, Mr. S. Would you like to say any more?
Well, I mean,
just
on that point, to be honest, I think, as you say, there are some I would say, almost unfair expectations on women in the West, whereby they're still expected to be good mothers, but also they're expected to have a full-time career. And it's like, well, looking after a kid is at least one full-time job, right? And then if you've got to do another one on top of that, it's very difficult, I think. And, you know, I know some people who are sort of married, they've got kids, both the man and the woman are having to work full-time jobs just to sort of pay the mortgage in the UK. And then you combine the stress and time of that with the stress and time of looking after the kids. They then have no time to sort of, to have man and woman time, basically. So they end up in a sort of romanticless, sexless marriage, essentially. And I think the fact that you're expected as a woman to do 2 full-time jobs contributes to that, because then it's very difficult to have time for anything else.
Yeah. Ho hum. Well, I think silence is the appropriate response. It just, I do feel like I'm living on another planet, but you probably suspected that anyway, didn't you, John? Let's talk a little bit about, perhaps we can hand the baton to John. What are your short-term goals, John? And would you like to tell us about where you plan to be in 5 years' time?
Okay, so as most of the listeners will know, I came out of a long-term relationship, nearly 10 years. So short-term goal is definitely not another relationship. And actually, if I'm honest right now, long-term goal is also not another relationship. But that may change. But at the moment, I'm really enjoying...
You wouldn't be the first.
Wouldn't be the first to say that.
To declare that, yeah.
I'm just really enjoying my own space, being single. Really enjoying getting back into day game. It's been fantastic. And at the moment, that's what I'm enjoying doing. You know, really, really, really enjoying it. That may change. I'm sure it will. The novelty, after a while it wears off, but it's definitely back, 100% back. So I'm just going to ride that wave of enthusiasm until it dies down, and then see where it takes me.
Ride it again.
Yeah. But no, I've had a long relationship, and having my own space is very precious now.
It's cool. You're like in the fairground, and you're being given free tickets to the what is that one? The roller coaster.
Roller coaster, yeah.
And it's come on, lad. You've had 15 rides already. I want another one.
Yeah.
You've got a real enthusiasm, a spring in your step.
I have absolutely.
It's really. It's infectious. It helps. It helps me, for example, who's a little bit jaded with it. Enthusiasm is infectious. This is the other reason why it's good to hang around guys, isn't it? Who into this stuff.
And also, life is about doing what you enjoy. And I had a realisation in Warsaw that I didn't have in London, and it took leaving London and coming here to see it. And it's that I actually am very happy without very much in terms of material possessions and what have you. London makes you chase money. It does, right? It's just like it's the culture there. And I had this realisation, it was a couple of weeks ago. I'm in a tiny little studio in an amazing part of Warsaw. Right? It feels like home now, but it's my favourite part of Warsaw. And I just became ecstatically happy for no reason. And I thought I could have infinite money in the bank, whatever, pick a figure, like $1 billion, 10 million, doesn't matter. Just infinite money wouldn't make any difference. I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't.
That's such a great topic. That's definitely fuel for another podcast, because the idea of how important is money in this area of your life. It's a world of difference between having enough to meet your needs and not being in debt, to being, being a millionaire, billionaire.
In that moment,
just imagine
I was the richest man in the world. Honestly, I was so happy. I thought, I love it here. I'm doing what I like doing. Right, I'm surrounded by beautiful women. The food here's great. I'm in this tiny little apartment, but it's got everything I need.
Amazing friends.
Yeah. Amazing guys that I'm hanging around with, and And then there's other things that I do outside of
Who listen to your speeches on dopamine?
Yeah. and then there's two other things that I do that are income generating, but I'm also passionate about them. And it's like I've got those three things, and I don't need anything else. And the money's almost irrelevant because I wouldn't change anything. Okay, what would I have? I'd have slightly more options when I'm choosing where I'm going to live, as in the apartment might be a little bit bigger. That's it.
Extra storage capacity.
Yeah. But I wouldn't have a car because I don't need one. What would I have? What would I spend the money on? There isn't anything. So like in that moment, it was like it was almost like enlightenment for my happiness. It was like the thing that you were chasing, you already had all of it. You've already got it. Stop chasing things because you've got what you want.
Mr. S, what are your short and long term goals in the area of women? And
yes, I mean in the short term, just developing my skills at the day game. Basically, I think after the original course a couple of weeks ago, after that I had finished, I had a feeling of sort of elation and exhilaration, just looking at what I'd managed to do, which was, the first time I'd done any approaches, certainly for a long time. And I managed to have, a lot of good conversations, a lot of like positive feedback from the women who were enjoying it, with this sort of, direct day game. Managed to get quite a few numbers given willingly from pretty attractive women. Not all replied, but some started to reply. Haven't managed to get any out on a date yet.
But
one
I think was very real prospect.
Yeah, one's
on
still
your
very
text.
keen. Exactly.
Just the timing didn't work this weekend.
But I think it feels very much within the grasp.
Yeah,
That's my point.
you're confident about.
Once you're getting, reasonable sets, you're starting to get some numbers from attractive women. It doesn't feel like it's too far away from starting to really be able to do that. So,
you hadn't made any approaches really, had you, before the course?
No, I mean I'd done probably about 30 or 40, as I say, about 3 or 4 years ago.
And Mr. A, just sorry to interrupt, how many approaches did you done before you did the course? Roughly. You've done a few, hadn't you?
Yeah, quite a few, like maybe 300 or something like this.
Okay.
Yes, but also in a very awkward way.
Sure.
So my evolution was quite slow, I would say.
Yeah, so perhaps in a similar position. So sorry, Stephen, Mr. S, you were saying.
Yeah, so that's my goal in the short term. I mean, I've also started setting up a sort of side business besides my main job, which again in the next year or so I'd like to get that to the stage where that's generating enough income for me to just do that, and that would ideally be working say 5 to 10 hours a week. So that would be ideal and give me even more free time. And then I mean in the longer term, to be honest, ultimately in the dating arena at least, I do want to get into a longer term relationship with a woman who is feminine, attractive, and it has a great personality and so on. So that's
Get married?
Yeah.
Have children?
Absolutely, in the longer term.
Yeah.
But I think for now it's about developing that skill set so you can
You're approaching from a point of view of confidence.
Exactly.
And how about you, Mr. A?
So for me, it's
You're a planner.
So for me, the main point right now is day game as a tool for personal growth, and especially for things like being more confident while I speak, speaking on my feet, pronunciation wise, voice projection, this kind of stuff, and obviously having more abundance in my life in terms of women, so that I don't get helpless and choose the first one I found that wants me. Obviously, getting better with girls which are on the fence. Sorry, so maybe girls who don't really know if I'm the right fit. So maybe becoming more persuasive. So maybe getting the dating game a bit more solid, because I don't have a lot of experience on this. And for longer terms, a bit like Mr. S, actually. So for me, it goes down to complicity. So a girl that really had matching principles, and also sexually wise, you know, because in the past I had both one which was very close to me in terms of principles and personality, but the physical part was missing, and I had a girl who was the contrary, but I couldn't find one where all the things were aligned. So I hope maybe it will happen at some time, and if I have abundance, I'm sure I will get this. So it's really an exciting time right now, and right now I'm just enjoying the present time. You know, when I have a good session, I take one or two numbers maybe. I look at the sky and I'm the most happy man in the world. You know, so it's really also enjoying the present.
How does the French accent go down? Do they find it attractive, do you think?
Well, many girls don't know the French accent because they don't know many French people here in Warsaw. Those that work in a French company or something like this, they can pick it up. Globally, in Poland, they are quite French friendly because because of history. So I think I have an edge there, so it's helping me quite
edge.
a bit. Yes, French edge. So I'm lucky with this.
You make the most of your talents, don't you? So you make it work.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's exotic, it's cosmopolitan, it's fashionable, it's Paris, it's all of that.
Yes, and it's original as well because they don't know many French people, so it's one of the nice way of living in a country that is not so close to your own country, you know. So you learn a lot about different cultures.
I like that goal, the sort of short-term to mid-term goal of working on presentation skills, voice, speeches, that sort of physical presence. That's quite a good one. I guess I should chip in too. I went to get a takeaway yesterday at the restaurant next door, like you do when you're a bachelor, and there was a party of people at the restaurant, and at one end there was a girl who was separated from the others. I don't know why. I wondered whether or not the group that was around had all gone out for a fag, and she was just sort of on her own. And she was kind of attractive, and she was looking over. I didn't approach her. That's something I would have done 2-3 years ago. And I have got, lost the zip a bit. Except when I'm on a course with other guys, then it's there. And then it's actually really there. So I just mentioned that because that is exactly why I got into it. What the fuck? I go in, I've got a free evening, just getting the takeaway, there's an attractive girl and there's no other motive, but she's on her own, she was looking a bit lonely, like at the other end of the table, we're ignoring her. Walk over, mate, sit down, open up a conversation, that is, and don't care where it goes, what the outcome is. Enrich that moment in her life and your life. So my resolution is, whatever it is, short mid-term goal, is to, because I did this once a few years ago, 3 months, where I said I'm just going to approach any girl that I find attractive at any time. It was the most amazing 3 months of my life. And I'm going to do that again over this Christmas period into the new year. And I'm going to go to Ukraine, Belarus, go to Lviv. I might go all the way to Kiev. And I'm just going to not check myself when I see an attractive girl who looks as if she could do with a little bit of witty banter with a stunningly charming English gentleman. What do you think, John?
Absolutely.
And I'm going on record now because you were talking about record earlier, and that's what I'm going to do for the next 3 months. So that's I think my long-term goal is long-term partner, marriage. Although I'm not so keen on the idea of having children. I think I'd rather they come part of the package. I have no problem with a girl who's got children, by the way. Do anybody else have that? Some guys have this genetic problem with, I'm not going to look after another guy's children. Do you even think about children, John?
For me, I don't feel any desire to have children. I just at the moment I just don't. That may change, but at the moment I don't feel an urge to want to have children.
You, Mr. A?
For me, preferably with a girl who doesn't have children, because of the burden that can be with, her ex-husband. Because obviously she would need to be organized with her ex-husband.
More of a practical reason for not wanting
more practical reasons.
To date a girl with a kid. And how about you, Mr.
I mean, for myself, as I say, I want children of my own in the future. But yeah, I wouldn't date a woman who already has kids because I wouldn't want to father another man's child.
Basically. I'm in an odd, unique camp there. Well, look, guys, we should wrap up. It's been...
Well, I did. I know you mentioned you didn't want to do a sales pitch, Alex, but I did think it might be useful if I talked.
Yeah. Any other final comments?
The sort of the course itself, just for other guys' benefits who might be thinking of doing one in the future.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, for myself, I thought the course was absolutely fantastic, and I had done another boot camp a few years ago with another set of guys, so I do have something to compare it to.
Right.
But I thought you guys were brilliant. So, you guys are really good at the day game skill, that's a given, but I think you're also very good at teaching it, which is another skill set altogether. And I think that there's a few ways in which you were very good at that. So one, I think you guys come from a very genuine place, like you've been on journeys yourself and you genuinely enjoy helping out other guys, which is why you're doing this. I suspect your sort of hourly rates on your sort of other enterprises are perhaps higher than what you would get from this, which I think, really shows it's coming from that genuine place. I think you were very good at sort of balancing positive comments and encouragement to make us feel good, and also giving useful feedback. And I thought you were particularly good at giving feedback because you would just give one or maybe two at the most things to work on for basically the whole session or the whole day, which I think is great, because if you start giving people more than one or two things in a day, you're just overloading them and it's just too much. So I thought that was fantastically constructed. There were some great little exercises we did on my sticking point sort of out of the sets. So obviously one of my development opportunities was doing more storytelling and things like that. So you had some great exercises about, how you can take any word and relate that to a story and tell something interesting.
Which is a skill, isn't it? Until it becomes natural.
Which is absolutely a skill that needs to be learned. And I think, you guys were just fantastic to hang out with. And I think the other thing that you guys did, which was very useful, was the addition of the stylist, Anna.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I think style in general is something every guy should be looking at and should be trying to learn more about. I'd already done a bit myself, but Anna was great at really taking that to the next level and really understanding, okay, given your skin tone, these are the colours you should be using. And then we went on a shopping session and she picked out a coat I would never even looked at myself. And actually I tried it on, oh yeah, this looks great. And actually I've had, even back in England, a couple of compliments on it since, which I think it just shows when you start thinking about style and dressing with intention, you just start getting compliments from women, from people in general.
Women especially. People
notice you in the streets. Whereas when I used to dress as Mr. Generic, never any compliments, ever. Whereas now, I dress with intention, you get compliments on dates quite regular. So that was a fantastic addition. And I think the other thing which is great is your sort of this sort of brotherhood you're creating, where or whatever you want to call it.
What is it in French?
Communauté, yes.
Of Mavericks.
Yeah, communauté de mentor, communauté
mentor.
Yeah, mentor, like a mentor in English. De compagnon, we would say also. Philo is like compagnon.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's really useful about that is when I came to Warsaw this weekend, I got in touch with Mr. A, who'd done the course a few weeks prior to me, And we hung out and we winged for each other as well, which, it's really helpful. It helps to keep vibe up and all this sort of thing. So that's a really useful thing you guys do.
Thank you very much. It's difficult to plug on your own, isn't it? For an English person, at least. I think we should. Any final comments, Mr.
Yes, just for my part, because I'm French, so I was a little bit apprehensive about the language barrier, and it's totally manageable. So it was something that was really not an issue. At some point, of course, I don't get everything, but I get most of what is necessary, and the good thing is that you simplify things in a way where we can concentrate on what really matters, a bit like Mr. S says. And yes, the community bonus about this is outstanding, yes.
It helps, doesn't it? And such an important part of it is what I remember from the Andy Oshie years. And we've been in touch, and it's really cool to see you take leaps and strides, frankly, some of the girls that you've been dating, and having only done the course in September. Anyway, we really must wrap it up there, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Hope you guys out there have found some nuggets of golden dating knowledge for you to gnaw on, chew on. We'll be talking about dopamine again, of course. We'll dedicate a whole podcast to that, I'm sure. But I think the financial topic is an important one for guys who think that they need to get rich to be good at this stuff. Do feel free to email us. You've got the email address, and comments are read, even though at times I don't respond. I'm pretty useless at responding, actually, but I do read the comments and they are useful. Good. From this clandestine gang, this confederacy of mavericks, whatever the French is, communauté de mentors, de compagnons. Hasta la vista, Auf Wiedersehen. Do you know any Spanish, John?
No.
Over and out. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Good night.
Bye.